August 1944. France. Inside German headquarters, tension was rising by the hour. General George S. Patton's Third Army was ripping across the French countryside at a speed few believed possible. Town after town collapsed. Entire German formations were being cut off before they could even react. The Allied advance was no longer threatening a breakthrough. It was on the verge of shattering the entire German defensive system in the West. German commanders made a desperate choice. They would commit their most feared weapon. 72 Tiger tanks, the heaviest, most powerful armored vehicles Germany possessed, were rushed directly into Patton's path. These machines were legends. Thick armor that most Allied weapons couldn't penetrate from the front. An 88mm gun capable of destroying American tanks at distances where return fire was useless. One Tiger could wipe out multiple Shermans before taking serious damage. On paper, this should have stopped Patton outright. What followed instead became a textbook example of how speed, coordination, and doctrine can dismantle even the most intimidating technology. When the fighting ended, fewer than 10 Tigers remained operational. The rest were destroyed, abandoned, captured, or blown up by their own crews. And Patton never slowed down. This is the story of how American tactics and relentless momentum broke Germany's elite armor and how the myth of the invincible Tiger died in the fields of France. If you want to understand how Patton dismantled Germany's best weapons, subscribe now. To see why this mattered, you first need to understand why the Tiger inspired such fear. The Panzer V Tiger was a beast, 56 tons of steel, armor so thick that Allied anti-tank rounds often bounced off its front plate, and towering above everything else was the 88mm gun, a weapon so powerful it could destroy any Allied tank long before Allied crews could even hope to penetrate the Tiger's armor. American tank crews feared encounters with Tigers. A single Tiger could stall an entire advance. The M4 Sherman, the backbone of Patton's army, was faster and more reliable, but hopelessly outmatched in a straight fight. It often took 4 or 5 Shermans to knock out one Tiger, and the Tiger usually destroyed several of them first. The numbers were unforgiving. In direct engagements, Tigers almost always came out ahead. German propaganda elevated them to near mythical status. Allied soldiers spoke of them as if they were indestructible. But Tigers were not flawless, and Patton understood their weaknesses better than most. First, they were slow. Even on roads, their top speed was limited. Off-road, they were sluggish. Chasing a mobile enemy was nearly impossible. Second, they were mechanically fragile. The Tiger's complicated drivetrain and heavy weight caused frequent breakdowns. Many Tigers never reached combat at all, abandoned due to mechanical failure. Third, they consumed fuel at an alarming rate. A Tiger burned enormous quantities of gasoline, and by 1944, Germany was critically short on fuel. Some Tigers ran dry before firing a shot. And most importantly, Tigers were defensive weapons. They were at their best when positioned and prepared. Static positions, firing at long range. Once forced to move, react, or attack, their limitations became deadly. German commanders knew this, but by August 1944, they were out of options. Patton's pace made traditional defenses obsolete. They needed something, anything, that could halt the American advance, so they committed nearly an entire battalion of Tigers. It should have worked. At the very least, it should have bought time. It didn't. Unlike many Allied commanders who hesitated when Tigers appeared, Patton had developed a deliberate approach to defeating them. He had studied German doctrine closely. He knew Tigers relied on range, preparation, and rigidity, and he designed his tactics to deny all three. Patton's approach rested on 5 core principles. First, never fight Tigers the way they want to fight. Tigers dominated long-range duels, so Patton avoided them. Terrain, smoke, maneuver, and flanking attacks were used to neutralize their frontal armor. Second, use combined arms relentlessly. Tigers were dangerous to tanks alone, but vulnerable when attacked by artillery, infantry, aircraft, and armor at the same time. Patton made sure every engagement overwhelmed Tiger crews with simultaneous threats. Third, attack logistics. Tigers required constant fuel, ammunition, and maintenance. Destroy supply columns, force movement, and the Tigers would defeat themselves. Fourth, maintain constant movement. Tigers were strongest when static. If they were forced to reposition repeatedly, breakdowns and fatigue would do half the work. Fifth, accept losses. Patton understood a hard truth. Avoiding Tigers cost time, and time allowed the Germans to recover. Losing tanks but maintaining momentum was preferable to stopping. These ideas were drilled into Patton's commanders. Tank units were discouraged from retreating. Artillery response times were shortened to minutes. Fighter bombers were prioritized for anti-armor missions. Patton's army didn't just encounter Tigers, they hunted them. In late August 1944, German intelligence identified Patton's likely axis of advance. Tigers were placed in carefully prepared defensive positions, hull down behind terrain features, guns covering open ground. It was textbook deployment. American armor would advance. Tigers would destroy them at range. The advance would stall. That was the plan. Instead, American reconnaissance spotted the Tigers early. Patton immediately altered his movement. Columns were split, routes diversified. Momentum never paused. When contact occurred, American units did not engage in tank duels. They called artillery massive concentrations, not to penetrate armor, but to suppress crews, blind optics, and force Tigers to button up. As shells fell, tank destroyers maneuvered into flanking positions. Faster and armed with heavier guns, they targeted side armor. Then came the aircraft. P-47 Thunderbolts attacked with rockets and bombs. Even when they didn't destroy Tigers outright, they damaged tracks, disrupted movement, and shattered morale. Meanwhile, Shermans continued advancing past Tiger positions toward operational objectives. This was exactly the situation Tigers were least equipped to handle. The first losses came not from heroic duels but from simple failure. One Tiger threw a track while repositioning under fire and was abandoned. Another ran out of fuel when its supply column was destroyed miles behind the lines. Two more broke down while attempting to tow a disabled vehicle. 3 Tigers were destroyed by flanking tank destroyers. Side armor penetrated, ammunition detonated. 2 more were hit by air attacks, one immobilized, the other set ablaze. All of this unfolded in less than 6 hours. By nightfall, more than 20 Tigers were gone. German crews were shaken. They had expected dominance. Instead, they were under constant attack, isolated, suppressed, and pursued. Requests for infantry support and air cover flooded German command channels, but Patton's advance had shattered coordination. Orders were delayed or never arrived. The second day was worse. American artillery targeted known Tiger positions before dawn. Tank destroyers established ambushes overnight. When Tigers attempted to move at first light, they were already under fire. Breakdowns increased. Maintenance was impossible. Fuel was scarce. By the end of the second day, German commanders realized the deployment had failed, not because Tigers were ineffective, but because Patton's tempo turned their strengths into weaknesses. On the third day, withdrawal was ordered, but retreat exposed every flaw. Tigers were slow. American forces were fast. Tank destroyers caught retreating Tigers from behind. Fuel shortages stranded others. Crews destroyed their own vehicles to avoid capture. Artillery pounded retreat routes. Aircraft harassed columns. Patton never eased the pressure. One captured German officer later said, "We expected a battle. What we experienced was a pursuit." That was the essence of Patton's doctrine. Never allow the enemy to stabilize. When the dust settled, fewer than 10 of the original 72 Tigers remained operational. The road ahead was open. What went wrong? Not technology, not bravery, doctrine. The Tigers were superior machines, but warfare is not decided by specifications. It is decided by systems, logistics, tempo, and coordination. Patton changed the nature of the fight, and in doing so he proved a timeless lesson when facing a superior weapon. Don't challenge its strength, deny it the chance to be used. What do you think mattered more, American tactics or German mistakes? Let me know in the comments. And for more stories where tactics defeat technology, subscribe now.